Welcome back to another episode of Engine Craft. Today we have a pretty cool go-kart. Somebody dropped this off saying it hasn't run in a while. They said about 2 years-ish. And they just dropped it off and said, get it running, please. So today we're going to dive into it. It's pretty open. The engine's way back here. Chain drive. Got a neat steering wheel here. Brake. Kill switch, and the throttle is here. The first thing I want to do before I start, it's probably got carb issues if it's been sitting that long. First thing I want to do is see if it has spark, because all over this thing there is wiring. You can see that is just connected like that. There's some up here, and then there's some back here. So I want to test to see if we have spark first, and then go from there. So let's dig into that. Before we do that, this is a clone 196 engine. It's basically the same thing that's in my Coleman CT200U. That's a 196 as well. That is, I believe, is made by Hisun. This one's made by Lonson? Yeah, something like that. Either way, they're all knockoffs of Honda engines or Predators. They're all very similar. So let's get this spark plug out here. I'm just going to move the switch in different positions and see what we get. Spark plug looks really clean. They might have just put this in just to see if it was actually doing anything. So let's get that on there. There's a on-off switch here. I'm going to put this to on. I don't know if it works. Put this switch in the run position, and let's see if we have any spark. Awesome. We do have spark. I don't know if you could see that or not. No, not really picking up on camera. So what I'm going to do next is just clean up that wiring really quick, just so there's solid connections and they're not, just out to the elements. So let me clean those up really quick. I'm just going to put soldered connections on. I'll show you guys after I get those done. All right, here's those connections done here. That one, this one, and then there was one up front that needed to be done. All right, so the next thing, obviously, and everybody knows what's coming, we got to take this carburetor off. So on these, it's just typical 2 bolts here. Pop this air cleaner off. Got a little vent that goes through here. Screw down. Usually they go into the, I don't know what's going on here. This is supposed to go into the overhead valve here. All right, let's take this air filter off. The air filter doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's a little dusty. We live on dirt roads, so that seems totally likely. It doesn't look too bad. Over there. Just wondering why this vent tube is so, I guess it goes to the carburetor. Those are probably 10 millimeter. Get these screws off. There's one. And I'm not going to be able to fit it in there with this. And there is 2. All right, let's start pulling this apart and see what we get. That out of the way. Yep, just your standard carb. I'm gonna have to pinch this fuel line off. Other than that, the only thing that I hate about these is you usually have to remove these studs here because you can't get this throttle rod off. This is supposed to actually have a spring on it. Well, I might be able to get this off. Slide this out. Is there any fuel in here? That fuel does not smell good. It's got a fuel level like plastic like splash thing in it. So I won't be able to tell. But let's see if anything comes out of the bottom here. Get this hose line off. Whatever is in there is not going to be good. Please be dry. It is. Perfect. Even better. Alright. Got the throttle rod off. And this is what I was worried about. Alright, so we got to break these free with a pair of vice grips. I don't know if these ones will have enough strength to do that. No. You can grab onto this portion here that's smooth because that doesn't matter. The only parts that matter are the threaded ends. So let me go grab a different pair of vice grips and see if we can get that off. We're finally free. I'm so happy you guys didn't have to sit there and watch the whole thing because that was awful. Let's get this on the bench and dig into it. I apologize for the mess on my bench. You know, I'm working on a lot of stuff right now. Let's get this bottom bowl off. There we go. Got some fuel leaking out. Lots of fuel leaking out. Jeez. Oof. That's not a good sign. That looks a little bad. Let's try to get this needle out, or the pin. Yeah. This does not look great. All right, let's try to get this jet out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Well, it's really bad. And along with this gasket's about to just turn to dust. So I'm going to leave that alone. I want to take the idle out so we can get the pilot jet. Let's get this idle out. Pop this pilot jet out. Oof. I don't know if we're going to get that either. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that all looks really bad. I don't know if you guys can see that close up, but it's pretty crusty. I'm just going to throw this in the ultrasonic as is. We'll have to see how this gasket turns out. As soon as I touch this, it's just going to turn into dust. So I'll probably use some RTV on here just to seal it up. I mean, even the choke feels a little grimy. Even the throttle feels grimy. So let's get all this into the ultrasonic. Let me go grab a Go grab some stuff. Oh, didn't even see the bowl. That looks really good. Oh, that's so bad. That's so bad. Float bowl going in. Full carb assembly. I was hoping it would sit better in here. There we go. That. Put a lid on it. Off we go. Well, we'll probably let that run for about a half hour. All right. Got the carb out of the ultrasonic. Everything seems to be good. Forgot to take that apart. We go blow. That looks a lot better. We still got some crusties in there. I mean, if I let this sit in the ultrasonic for probably an hour, probably get all of this out, but should be fine. I got other stuff going on that needs to occupy that space, so just wipe this out really good. Yeah, cleaned up pretty good. All right, let me take this one over to the air compressor and blow all this out. Alrighty, so we're back. Turned out really good. Let's start getting some stuff assembled here. Here's the float. Float cleaned up, of course. Let's get that little spring on here for the needle. Got to push the spring down a little bit. There we go. So we get that spring action. Drop that guy in there. Here's the float level. Probably looks right. The bad thing about these plastic floats is they don't have a tang on them, so you can't. It's just all plastic, so you can't adjust this even if you wanted to. I need to back you guys up a little bit. There we go. All right, let's blow through this pilot jet. All right, when you do these, just check to make sure that you still have the O-ring that's on here. And just press this guy in, and there's a flat right here, and so you can't press it in the wrong way. Go, that's all the way pressed down. Let's get our throttle screw. Probably gonna have to reset the throttle on this. Just seat it until it touches. There we go. All right, what's next? Then the bowl, which like I said, I'm going to put a little bit of just like the lightest, thinnest coat on here. Just because I don't really like the way that gasket looks. And they don't want to spend money on a rebuild kit. So, let's just give it a nice thin layer here. Ultra thin. Just enough to cover the metal. Just like that. I'll go. Carb goes on like this. You always want to make sure, if this doesn't have any direction this is supposed to go, you always want to just make sure that you can access the drain bowl. Just because if you have to do that in the future, you don't want it on the other side of the engine where you can't get to it. All right, let's put this down. Crank her down a little bit. Perfect. All right, it's time to pop this back. Actually, before we put this back on the machine, I do want to test it. Where did I do with that piece of tube? I thought I had one here. I do. That tube's too big. There we go. Fuel is on. Can blow through it. Upside down. Oh, it came off. Just to test to see if the float's working properly. Nothing. It kind of feels a little stiff. I mean, fuel is flowing. Let's see if the fuel drains out. Yeah, I mean, fuel's running down. Yeah, shouldn't be a problem. All right, so let's get this hose line on here, and then let's get this reassembled to the carburetor, or to the engine. All right, so what we're gonna do here, this gasket looks okay-ish. Get our bolts back through here, like so. We're gonna have to thread these on. Push those a little too far. There we go. Start the threads. You stay over there. All right, I'll cut this part out so you guys don't have to agonizingly watch me do this for 5 years. All right, let's get some fresh fuel in this thing and see if it'll start. This is my little pump here. It's probably going to leak because it always does. Don't buy one of these. Is it leaking? A little bit. Should be enough fresh fuel there. Oh, yeah. Lovely leaks. Oh. Okay, so that's on. Choke is on, fuel's on. Kill switch should be on. Okay. See if it starts. What's going on with this pole starter? Choke off. Well, did we lose spark? Got fuel. Got spark. I guess we should check compression. See if these valves are all out of whack. Let's do that. One thing at a time. Really thought this thing would just kick over. But, you know, things don't go always as planned. Let me get you guys closer in here so you can look at the gauge. All right. See what we get here. So far, we've gotten absolutely nothing. That is a really bad sign. So let's get this overhead valve off right in here and see if we got valve issues. Well, I should have known better and should have checked compression first. So I was going in here and I was looking and I'm like stumped as to why this doesn't have compression. I didn't think the flywheel key sheared. And then I was looking in here and I kind of seen a weird movement when I was pulling this over. And yeah, I'd say that this engine is toast. Those are bent push rods. And when I pull the engine over now, you can just hear it keep spinning. I don't even think that the piston's connected anymore. I think that is completely blown apart. So I called the person I got this from and told them what's going on. This engine is pretty much shot. And they told me to replace the engine. So I'm going to buy a Predator 212, which is a little bit more powerful than this 196. And it should just bolt right up. So once I get that, we'll bolt on the new engine and go from there. Well, since the last one blew up, the person who owns this said they want to replace the engine, so I went out and got a Predator 212. The old engine was a 196cc, and this is a 212, so it has 16 more cc. Other than that, it's pretty much identical. This one's just a little spicier. You probably barely even notice the difference in it. So we're gonna get this out and get it on the bench, put some oil in it, make sure everything's good with this. And then we're going to mount it, put the chain on, and then hook up the kill switch, and we should be good from there. So let's open this up. If you have never bought a Predator engine, almost all of these look identical. They're all like Honda clones. And they're super cheap from Harbor Freight. And they can replace a lot of things. If your power washer engine goes bad, or your generator, anything like that. Here we are. Oh. Here we are. And that is the Predator. Let's get it on the bench. All right, so there's not really much to this. I mean, it basically tells you how to run this. Add some fuel, add some oil. I did buy brand new oil. I think this only takes like a half quart. Off, on switch. We're gonna have to mess with that because we got to wire in that kill switch. Here's the oil fill. The crank comes with a keyway, which is nice. Pull this over so it's kind of straight up. There we go. All right. So let's get some oil in this thing. Do this on a level surface. Should only take like a half quart. There's probably engine or oil in there from when it was run. All right, let's get a funnel. Now you only fill these things up until the thread. You see it on the last thread here. For this, I'm just using some Pennzoil 10W30. 10W30 is what this engine calls for. All right, half quart. And truly, if this is a brand new engine, what you should be doing is running this for, I don't know, a few hours, 10, 15 hours or so, and then replacing the oil just because of that break-in period. There's probably a lot of metallics that come off and stuff like that. And you don't want that floating around in your crankcase. All right, so if we look here, the oil looks to be a little bit more. There we go. Now, I made a mistake with the other engine. The other engine wasn't over full. There's gas leaking past into the crankcase, which was making it, it was losing its viscosity. That's why it was so thin. So we're all the way up there, the full mark. Crank this down. Come on. There we go. All right, next thing to do is to get this over onto the cart and start getting it screwed down. First, before I bolt the engine up, I want to fit this clutch in here, or on here, just get it kind of fitted first. All right. So the keyway goes to probably halfway through here. So in reality, we only want a keyway that actually, put this in here, that should stick out about that far, which is way too long. So we kind of want to cut it right there. Let me get a marker. There, we got our mark. And then I'm just going to grab my little grinder and grind that off really quick. All right, there's our cut the length keyway. So we're going to get this into the clutch first. Come on. Make sure this is also smooth in here. Grab a little bit of grease. Some grease on the shaft. That's what she said. All right. Just trying to fit this keyway in here. Does not fit perfect, even though it should. Make sure this is all cleaned out. Maybe we'll get it in on the shaft first. All right, now let's try. There we go. All right, so I don't know how far back this needs to go because the chain needs to be in line with this. So we're going to throw this on and then we'll get everything lined up and start pounding this down to really assess where we need to be at. All right, there we are. Also, this plate down here has slots on it, so that's how you adjust the chain tension. Let's get this on. That seems a little loose, but it's not. Let's get this chain on first before we start sliding it around. All right, there we go. All right, as you can see, it is definitely not lined up. So we need to get, I'm gonna get a block of wood so I don't damage this. Start kind of hitting this in. It's a little bit better. But what I also need to do is get these bolts in here. So let me start doing that. The mounting on this should be identical to the one that we pulled off. All right, that in. Kind of play with our chain tension here. Well, we can't really play with it until we get this knocked on correctly. So this needs to go over quite a bit. So let's start knocking that over. Let's go over about a ½ inch. Still need to go over more. Yeah, so this is a little loose. I got to put the nut on there. Run that nut down, since this is in line now. All right. All right, there's a bolt on the back I want to tighten, just to lock everything in place. If I can get to it. There we go. There we go. All right, now the next thing is we got to set is the chain tension. So that's a little too tight because this does have shocks on it, so when it pivots, it's going to pull the chain tighter. So we actually want to move this. Make sure this is level too. We don't want this, you know, being all wonky. So the hardest thing about this is going to be getting this up so I can get to the bolts. So let me see if I can jack this up. That should be good enough. All right, let's see if I can get a socket onto these. Nope. 13 millimeter. Perfect. All right, so all I really need to do is tighten the rear ones and get those set up straight. And then I'll worry about that should be good there. There's a little bit of slack. So let's get this one run down. We do still look straight here. So I'll get this one run down. All right, and then on to the next two. All right, let's get this on the ground. All right, before I get the throttle hooked up, and this one's got a little bit of a different throttle, so we're gonna have to mess with that. Won't need this, or any of this, really. Have this come out here, clip in there. You can do it two ways. You can do it this way. Before we do any of this, I really just want to see it run. So this is covering this, and I don't really want to take this apart, so we'll do it this way. There's, if you look in these Predator 212s, you can either have the throttle coming in here, and there's a little spring over here, or you can have the throttle coming in this way, which is the way that we're going to be doing it. So, all right, let's get some gas in this. I'm going to drain the gas from the other tank, from the old engine, because I just put that fuel in literally yesterday, and that's fresh gas. Oh, my muffler. Let's get my pump. Let's get this off here. All right, let me just start pumping. right, now that that's all transferred over, let's give it a start. All right, let's go. Engine's on. Start. Fuel is on. Let's see. That's a good running engine. All right. Next thing we got to do is hook the throttle cable up, which I'm kind of concerned about because it didn't seem like the throttle was returning. Return on this one. So let's take this cover off again. See what we got going on. All right. Linkage for the governor there. But it's not returning the way I'd like it to. Maybe I gotta loosen that nut there. Should have spring action back, you know. It's not doing that. There's another spring I gotta put on here that I don't know about. So that's idle there, which I think is probably set fine. See what that does. There we go. That's a little bit better. Now we got spring action there. That's all I was looking for. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and get our throttle hooked up. All right, so we need to loosen this. This is just a hold down with throttle cable, and then this is the actual You gotta be kidding me. I'm gonna have to somehow hold that. Probably should just be using the socket. It's fine, loosen that up so we can get the throttle cable through. So, feed this guy. Through here. And then through here. There we go. Now we're going to clamp down on this, because that's exactly how far we want it in. And this all the way out. Want this line pulled tight, like that. Start coming down on this a little bit. Hold this taut. There we go. There we go. That's that spring action we were looking for. All right, that works good there. Let's get this cover back on. All right, let's see what we got. All right, perfect. That's all hooked up. Last thing we got to do is hook up the kill switch. So we want this to always be on. All right, I figured it out. Just got to connect this guy to this guy using a little tubing. We should be good to go. All right, let's cut this back. All right there. Just had to figure out the right combination. Let me tell you, I'm no electrician. Put some zip ties on this just to keep it all organized. All right, so do this. Show that in there. All right, let's get my torch. It's worked for like 2 minutes. That's all I needed it for. All right, let's see if that works. Power on, pull. Yep. Power off. Good. All right, so the only thing left to do really is I want to get this zip tie on here to get this stabilized, and then I want to tie up some of that other stuff. So let's get my handy dandy bag of zip ties. Where are my side cutters? There they are. All right, so we get this wrapped up here, so this throttle cable doesn't go anywhere. I'll get some mini ones for the wiring. can put a lot of this in here. Put this in here. Wrap some of this up. Yeah, that works good. Zip tie on here just for safekeeping. All right, let's go take it for a little test, even though it's dark and late outside. It is dark, and it is raining, and it's wet, but we'll just take it for a little tiny drive. All right. On. All right, we'll do some testing tomorrow. Ready? made it this far in the video, I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really close to my 500 subscriber goal, and I want to do that by the end of the year. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. About 98% of the people that watch my videos are not subscribed. It greatly help my channel, and it helps me create content and hopefully create better content in the future. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you next week.